it usually takes a slight lag between the attendees coming in and me hitting broadcast.
It is clear though, right? My audio.
No, your audio is clear. Yeah, everything's clear.
Good.
All right, so we got people coming in. All right, so I figure we can just kind of get started. As attendees come in, they will be muted, so it shouldn't cause too much disruption. So I am Anastasia Simon. I'm the managing director at Shadow Labs over at Shadow Ventures. We are a seed stage investment firm based in Atlanta, Georgia, with a focus on the built space. So that's architecture, engineering, construction, and commercial real estate. So today we're going to talk about how to maximize team chemistry in this new work from home world that we find ourselves in. I think it's something that's incredibly topical, considering everyone has been forced to work from home over the past few months, and some of us, I think, have been better suited to it than others. So figuring out how to connect your teams better when you're doing remote work. So to do that, we have with us Jericho Richardson. She is the founder and CEO of HackOut Ninja. And Jerica has a really great and interesting background. And I think, you know, why am I talking about it when she can tell it better herself? So Jerica, if you can just introduce yourself to the group and then kind of provide a little bit of context for our conversation, I think we can get started.
Sure thing, and I appreciate that. So first of all, I'm really glad to be here. My name is Jericho Richardson, and my startup, my baby, is HackOut Ninja. So there is a lot of backstory, a lot of things that I do, but the things that pertain to what we'll discuss today. So I work full-time as a program manager, strategic initiatives program manager at Equifax, handling some of the big transformation projects that are taking place across the enterprise and making sure that everything is secure, our data is secure, that our customers are enjoying their experience with Equifax, et cetera. So very exciting role, and I work with a lot of people, a lot of different personalities, and big projects always mean a lot of opinions. So definitely building camaraderie amongst the team is really important. The other side to it, so HackOut Ninja is a platform that is fully focused on frictionless innovation. So it originated with supporting hackathons, making sure that we could manage hackathon events, ideation events, and the intellectual property that comes out of those events, and making sure that the teams are supported so that they can continue working and developing their ideas and making them come to fruition. So the HackOut platform is something that helps optimize teamwork, both from an event standpoint and from a corporate company, internal company standpoint as well. So a lot of intellectual property has gone into developing that infrastructure and, you know, all the psychology that goes behind really effective collaboration. And then on the other side, I am running for office as well. I'm running for Cobb County Commissioner, and when you think about commissioners, there's a lot of collaboration that's needed between the different governing agencies and amongst all of the business community, and supporting entrepreneurs and working with entrepreneurs and identifying business opportunities that can allow them to grow. So that's just a little bit of kind of my background right now. I do have an engineering background from Georgia Tech. I graduated in biomedical engineering, pre-med, pre-law, and also have a lot of business background, so that I went into afterwards. So that is what I'm bringing to the table, and I'm looking forward to a wonderful conversation about encouraging team camaraderie, but also collaborating with external parties and making sure that everything's a good culture fit. So,
right. So we got our first question already.
Oh, wow. Okay.
As you were introing, so powerful. So what tips do you have for facilitating communication during work from home besides Zoom? I think everyone is feeling like a Zombie these days. That was my word of the day.
That's a good one.
So what are some other ways you think we can facilitate communication and collaboration?
Yeah, so think about this. There are different ways that you want to think about collaboration. There's the enablement of collaboration, and so that's where Zoom falls. Zoom is not the end-all be-all. Without the right infrastructure to why you're meeting, it kind of falls flat. But with regards to enablement, your phone, chat, email, Zoom, Google Hangouts, so on and so forth, are all mediums that allow you to collaborate. And so I'm going to try to break your question up there by saying, how you collaborate is a little bit different than how you're enabled to collaborate. So if you want to facilitate your sessions, there are some constraints that you want to make sure are in place. And there are some considerations that you want to take with why you're even meeting in the first place. So let's see, I'm gonna pull my notes really quickly. You're gonna have to make sure whenever you have a Zoom meeting or a Google Hangout or what have you, you wanna make sure that there's an agenda in place. The agenda is what's gonna help guide it. And it sounds really frivolous, but I've been in countless meetings where there is no set agenda and things go haywire. And so it really takes a lot to kind of premeditate the meeting before you actually get into it. And the biggest things that you want to identify are what are the outcomes of that meeting. So that way everybody stays focused, because when you're in this world right now that we're living in, it's very hard to define those boundaries between work and life. And so people tend to overschedule meetings. So having clearly defined meetings and objectives, it's just really respectful. And it also makes everyone a little bit happier on the meeting itself, because they know what it is that they need. And everyone knows that once that need is accomplished, they can get off. The other piece to that is making sure that you're actually, why are you setting the meeting in the first place? So some things can be accommodated with email. Use that if it can be. But email can, if it's something that's complex, then a phone, and it's one person, then a phone call is merited. If it's complex and it requires different stakeholders to make a decision on something, then that's when you want to call a meeting. And like I said, in place. Let's see. Those are kind of the biggest things. I am a big proponent of Slack. It makes communication really, it makes it real time, makes it really fast. So any kind of chat modules that you have are really just helpful to enhance that collaboration. But yeah, I mean, it's a very general question. Hopefully that answers something of what you were getting at, but I'm definitely open for a more clarified version of that question, and I can dig in.
Awesome. I think that's super helpful. So as a team, we've worked virtually with our incubator for about 2 years now. So prior to everyone being sent home, most of our communication with our external stakeholders was going on via Slack. And so I think what you're saying is very important. Sometimes you're using these mediums to communicate and you can mix it up. Like personally, I'm a big fan right now of using Zoom on my phone and not turning on the video, just treating it as a phone call so I can kind of walk around and break up the monotony. So
yes.
I think, what you're saying is so meaningful, and we have to look at these things, like you said, they're enabling communication. They are not taking the place of, they're facilitating. So yeah. So I got another question. What are some things that leaders can do to create a good remote culture?
Good remote culture. So several companies have taken on doing the happy hours just to kind of check in with everyone. That's really helpful. And the other thing there is to, one of the unique things that you get inside of a company that you don't necessarily get from home is a lot of one-on-one communication. So you're engaging with your coworkers, you see them, you say hi, you might hang out in the break room or what have you. And you'll talk to your manager a little bit more than you normally would, you know, in general, if you're remote. And so that's something that's really helpful, is to make sure that all of your, you know, all the reports, the direct reports, et cetera, depending on what size your company is, that you're having regular check-ins. I would say weekly. If you're managing a team, do your weekly check-in with your individual team members and just check on their sanity, right? The other thing is that you want to encourage good work-life balance. So make sure people are taking lunch at some point in the day, because I know that I'm getting double time on most of my meetings nowadays, and I will turn my computer off and eat and watch Netflix for an hour or so, or 30 minutes or an hour, and just take in that time, because it allows you to segment and compartmentalize. And that helps build the culture, because the person is able to breathe, right? And that's very important when it comes to them bringing their full selves and feeling comfortable actually delivering the work. Stress work is not necessarily the best work. Let's see, what other things? Definitely want to encourage, so there's also a difference between meetings and work. So we are kind of, you know, dying in a bunch of meetings being scheduled. And so the idea is, on your calendar, just block some time to do your actual work, even if it's empty time. Don't leave it open on your calendar, because someone will schedule it. So that is also a suggestion. Make sure that you have a break in between your meetings, and make sure that you give yourself time to actually do work. Otherwise, you'll find yourself having meetings from 9 to 5 and then doing your work from 5 to 9, and that's not helpful. So.
I think that was really good, particularly the piece about work-life balance and trying to set that time. So I love that. What advice do you have for people in client-facing functions? How can one make up for the loss of face-to-face interaction? So you're talking about your sales people, relationship building, things like that.
Very, very good question. Some things can't be fully replaced, but I mean, really, it's just a matter of checking in, right? You want to start by understanding from a sales perspective, because I actually did work in sales for a little bit, but you want to really understand what your client is going through. And no matter what medium you use, that's going to always be your best strategy, because you're able to cater the conversation along those lines and maybe even be helpful in their life, whether it's regarding the product or not. And that kind of touch point, right? I think HubSpot refers to as delight factor. That kind of aspect goes well beyond just getting the initial sale. It might mean other sales as well. So, you know that human interaction won't be replaced, but you can definitely accommodate it by just understanding what's going on in that person's life, and then making sure that you're being very attentive and focused on capturing that information and utilizing it. So hopefully that was helpful.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I think it's like what we've been calling being human, you know, like remember that, and taking the time to have empathy.
Yes.
Personally, from a marketing standpoint, making sure that the communications you send out have empathy, they're empathetic, you understand that people have their kids and their job, and everything is now happening in the home all at once, and understanding that someone may not be as easy to get a hold of, you know, or they are trying to split their attention, or they have so many things going on. And so if you take a second, take a pause and give them grace, I think is really, like for me as someone who works in mostly client-facing roles, that's what's been helpful for me, taking that minute to pause.
Yeah, and that definitely reminds me, I wanted to mention on the last question. So talking about that work-life balance with taking time for lunch, taking time between meetings, taking time for work itself. It can also mean calling out time for your employees that have kids, you know, education time, giving them that support so that they can spend time with their children. and help them throughout this process, because this is traumatic on different levels that haven't been realized yet by everyone. So
yeah, and that was a good segue into this next question. If you sense that an employee is struggling, they're not focused, they're lonely, they're probably dealing with some of those mental health factors that we're all struggling with daily, what are some things you think that would be helpful that you can do as a leader?
I always like to do root cause analysis on this. What's really driving that decline in performance? I mean, everybody's going to be different, and you have to treat everyone differently in that case. It's not like you're going to put this one size fits all, like, oh, you're having this problem? Well, let's put you through this process. The process may be as high level as getting them in contact with, maybe some kind of counseling resources. There are a lot of resources out there from that standpoint that are being provided and supported by local government. But it really is just understanding that person. And this is where I mentioned like the direct report meetings, like to just, make sure that those happen, because those touch points are really critical to understanding what's going on inside. But making sure those resources are available, and making sure that they're aware that there are open lines of communication, and just providing and supporting, like I said, some counseling resources. But it's really starting with why they're feeling that way. And it may just be that they need to take some time off. They may be going through a lot. I mean, I have a lot of family members that are impacted by this virus. And so, their extended family, if it were my immediate family, I'm pretty sure it would be causing a lot of stress on my side that would interfere with my productivity. And so it may just be time that they need off. It just really depends on each case. And you've got a lot of families that never really spent this much time together either. So there are a lot of dynamics taking place in the home. There may be some people that are in dangerous situations. So it's just really being mindful that, there are certain realities that are just going to impact the business. So you really want to understand, what is this person contributing? Can certain pieces be offloaded? What pieces are more priority? And then what allowances can be made for that employee? Because at the end of the day, we all want to come out of this together as a family. So that would be what I would suggest.
All right, perfect. And I think kind of keeping this thread of these emotional or mental health kind of issues, these interpersonal issues that come up. How do you facilitate highly complex, serious, or emotionally charged conversations when people aren't face to face?
You make it as face-to-face as possible. I mean, you encourage people to have their videos on, and if you need to bring an expert into the room, like obviously discuss that with the individual first, and just say like, hey, we have this resource that we want to bring in because we're doing an evaluation with all of our employees or what have you, and you just kind of run through. But it's really, that's going to be your best bet, because everyone's feeling their way through in this process, but that's going to be your best bet, is really just connecting on that level, and then doing periodic check-ins or frequent check-ins to see what progress is like. But that person does need to be in control. Whoever it is that is getting the help, you're going to want to give them space to have control over their own progress. So definitely that.
Awesome. So in regards to virtual meetings, what are some best practices beyond the general advice to clarify your purpose, circulate the stuff you mentioned earlier in the conversation? What are some other best practices you see?
Yeah, so I've been on a lot of meetings with a lot of people at once. Those are not that effective. The only way to have that, like I mentioned earlier, the only way that those can be effective are with really concrete agenda items. But for more collaborative sessions where you're not really just trying to come up with decisions, you're trying to come up with like a solution design or a new idea or what have you, you want to limit those meetings to 4 to 6 people. 4 is optimal, 6 is suboptimal, but your limit. If you go below that or above that, you're going to have lesser quality results. You're also going to want to make sure that that everyone has. There are a couple dynamics that you're playing with. You're playing with personality dynamics, so people not feeling comfortable speaking up. So you want to make sure that the tools that you use are open-ended and allow for different people with different perspectives to chime in. And you also want to make sure things are time boxed. You don't want them to go forever. You want to say, we're going to do this session, we're going to do these activities for 30 minutes. Then we're going to do these activities for 15 minutes, and so on. Those kinds of things are very, very critical if you're talking about getting effective outputs. And then just in general, there are a lot of different collaboration tools, methodologies that you can leverage. And I know like there's the whole Six Sigma thing where there are a lot of ways to think about problems, ways to think about products and systems. So you'll want to use some of those tools as a structure for your meeting, for your collaborative session. And I'm actually working on my own series that I'm about to copyright and push out there as well for collaborative tools. And that's actually what we're using to power some of the HackOut Ninja intellectual property. So that is, they're just different ways of thinking about things, using T-charts, right? Using like business model canvases, using, what are some of the other ones, like customer discovery diagrams, workflow sessions. Those are really fun. There are a lot of different tools that you can use in order to facilitate those discussions and keep everyone on track and keep different people speaking, even those that don't necessarily feel that confident. So.
All right. Do you see this crisis changing the way all teams and organizations operate going forward?
I won't say all, but I will say many. I will say that there are, I know for this group, there are a lot of people that have clients that are in the development arena or construction, commercial real estate. That industry is going to be impacted. So if you're not having collaborative sessions around those topics, I would definitely be having some around those topics. Where's the future of that market? Because that's going to affect your bottom line. But that aside, how we work, I think that teleworking is going to be definitely an option that most companies add to their list of considerations. I would refer to it as more of a dispersed model or a distributed model of working, and I think that we'll see more utilities that enable that. So, I mean, even, I'm looking at this and looking from a commercial real estate development standpoint, you're probably going to have smaller areas, like more co-working type of opportunities, some that are integrated within parks or what have you, so that people can work from home, but still kind of connect, but still kind of have a place to go for privacy. And that the buildings will be more so for branding strategies or for events or for just like kind of corporate gatherings, and they'll probably be shared spaces. So just take those considerations, take those considerations into mind for your business models, but also for the future of working in general. I think we're going to see an uptick in this because of just the efficiencies. I mean, a lot of companies are seeing an increase in productivity, switching to the work from home model. So.
Awesome. When communicating with external organizations / businesses to work from home, is it better to push for phone calls / Zoom as central communication model compared to a normal email chain?
For external communication, if it's your first interaction, okay. If it's a cold call. If it's, we've had an initial call and there is an interest in doing something, that's when you hop on Zoom or Google Hangout or what have you, and you do that through video. You want to look at people's eyes. You want to read all the nonverbal cues in those meetings. And then from there, all of the other rules apply, right? Is it complex? Is it simple? Is it a decision? And that will determine whether or not you need to schedule a call or host a meeting or something else, like send an email or a text or chat.
I agree with that 100%. I feel like, to me, email usually progresses to Zoom or a call, or like that initial one will be always a Zoom chat. So, and then you turn the video on. I'm a huge fan of not turning video on, but I think it's a personal choice. But in those initial meetings, I think it's really good to look that person in the eye and get a read for them, you know?
Yeah, and I will say this as well. So like definitely for those SOW conversations, statement of works, you need that to be a meeting. And you must have an agenda, especially if you're going through the specifics of a contract. You're going to want an agenda because it makes you look prepared, and two, it keeps your business partner, your potential client, on track, because they can get derailed very quickly, and you can wind up not having any answers to anything at the end of the meeting. And then you'll have a series of emails. I'm just telling you how this goes. You'll have a series of emails going back and forth on a line item. And then maybe you'll have another call after that where someone gets wise to it and puts an agenda together and they make an agreement on those particular line items. So I would just say you start off with that agenda on some of those questions, whether they be technical questions or operational or logistical questions. You make sure that that's included in that conversation. So that way, when you get back, you're getting back with the right information.
Yeah, I love that. That's a way to work smart and efficient. So what are some good ways to assess employee performance during these times?
Oh, there's so many different ways to assess performance. I think one of my favorites, though, is where you're actually getting feedback from the employee. How do they think they're doing? And then to discuss about the areas where they feel the most concern. And then what it allows you the opportunity to do is share where you see areas of concern or areas of opportunity, and build a plan on where to go next. But you do have to be mindful that if you have, especially if you have a larger company, different employees have different backgrounds, different experiences. So not everyone is comfortable or aware enough to be able to share what it is that you're looking for. So, keep your performance reviews a little bit open-minded, ask a lot of questions, and give them a lot of opportunity to share their stories and what it is that they're experiencing, because you may discover some things that you weren't aware of. But in general, productivity, like, do they feel comfortable? Do they feel overwhelmed? Are things getting done? Are things getting done should be your primary measure, not how many hours they're spending on something, but are they accomplishing what needs to get done? And are they going above and beyond to make sure that things are flowing, things are moving smoothly? And so I think that's where you should be focused on, are those real opportunities, because that's where your company will grow.
Awesome. So what challenges do you feel remote workers have compared to those in the office?
I mean, I think all of these questions are indicative of the challenges. The human touch is a challenge. Being able to see how employees are engaging your employees, that's a challenge. Collaboration is a challenge. Getting people to speak up and having kind of the one-off meetings, those are challenges. Not to mention all the pressures of the home, family and children, the health of the loved ones. Those are all challenges that we're facing. So now, I mean, the truth is that you're not just dealing with your work employees, you're dealing with the whole person. So this is where, as an owner or manager, you have the opportunity to step up and embrace your employee as the whole person. But those challenges are across the board. They're in every company. There's also efficiency challenges, because there are some new questions that are brought up. What really is the meaning of, I mean, these are questions that are happening, not to put down an industry or not, but what is the benefit of the real estate that we are occupying? How can we leverage it? People are having those conversations in meeting rooms. And so those are very difficult questions. Those are challenges. Those are challenges that people that came before you didn't necessarily have to answer. So, yes, there are challenges now.
Yeah, and I think to that point, you have to think about work from home in this context very differently than work from home and working remotely prior to this, to us being quarantined.
Yes.
Uh, because even people I know who had been working remotely for 2 years, 3 years prior to this have seen an adjustment and there are new challenges. It's not like we all woke up one day and said, hey, let's go work from home. That'll be great. It'll be so much fun. It's out of necessity. This
Yes.
is we're in the middle of a pandemic. And so I think
Yes.
a lot of the challenges we're facing that are specific to this container, like you mentioned, the stresses of having everyone at home and having employees who may need to have instruction time for their kids, or
Right.
having family members who are sick and you're maybe the caregiver, but you can't give care because of the way the hospital systems are set up right now. So I think
Right.
we have to frame it a little bit differently and say, what are the challenges now versus previously? Yes, you may have gotten distracted, but I think this is a whole new ball game, when we
Right.
talk,
Right.
And
we can add one more on there. When in the normal remote work per se setup, you're still able to go to offsite meetings. So that's important across the board. You can't really do that now.
Yeah, that's so true. Like I had yesterday an issue in my building where we had to have plumbers come in. And if this were normal work from home, I could have just gotten my stuff, gone to, Starbucks or somewhere and worked from a different setup. Now that's not possible.
Right.
Everything that you need, everything that is happening to you is happening in the home. And so you kind of have to manage it's a different skill set, when you think about it that way. So yeah.
And here's what I would say: with every set of challenges comes a really great opportunity to develop thought leadership. So I feel like I'm picking on real estate. That's because I really am concerned. I want to make sure that industry makes it through, because it's so important, especially to how we communicate, how we convene. And so one of the things that companies can do, if you're serving that industry, is to continuously develop thought leadership, because you can help guide that industry into what the future could look like as well. And how to leverage this as an opportunity for us to grow, as opposed to feeling afraid or concerned, or let's focus on the idea that we can and we will. And so what does that look like?
So speaking of those opportunities, what are some opportunities you see for those of us who are looking to be better team players and to collaborate more effectively during this time?
What do you mean?
So, because we're talking about creating that opportunity, we at Shadow, we work with entrepreneurs and we are entrepreneurial ourselves. So what are some things that you see outside of everybody just hopping on Zoom happy hours, which is just, if you've been on them, they're very awkward.
Very, very. I'll tell you the smoothest, and just a note, and then I'll let you finish clarifying. But one of the notes that I had here was, outside of the happy hours, definitely leverage sharing resources and pop culture. Netflix can really get different groups through. And so if you hear about something that, brought levity into your life, or brought some kind of perspective, share that with your colleagues, because it's just helpful. It's definitely helpful to have that perspective. And it's just kind of one of those side things that I'm noticing as well in a lot of meetings that tends to be very helpful, not just for the individual sharing, but for everyone else. So.
Great. And I think that's I think that's kind of going, as you're saying that, I'm answering my own question in my head, because when you talk about Netflix and sharing, or playlists, I listen to Spotify probably tens of thousands of hours of music. And I'm very big on, hey, check out this playlist. So it's that the community kind of building things that you would ordinarily do over the water cooler, of hey, did you watch Tiger King? If you have not Tiger King, watch Tiger King. It is a train wreck. But
I was in a meeting the other day, and we were having a great discussion, about a program that we're putting out there. And, I brought up Working Moms.
Yeah.
And how relatable that show was. And it was a call with other women and stuff. And we just kind of laughed because two hadn't watched it yet. And so we were able to share some of the things that were common, that were similar. And so, you know, it just brings like oh yeah, that's right, everything is going to be okay. And we have gone through similar things and we're still able to push through these things. And it brings a nice extra layer of connectivity that just being on, you know, virtual Zoom, it just won't give you. So
yeah, and I think it's the opportunity to be human. You know,
yes.
We are in, I hate to say unprecedented because everyone says that.
Everybody's using that.
Let's come up with a better word. But you know, this is a situation that, like, I was talking to one of our potential sponsors yesterday, and he was talking about his grandmother. This is literally a lifetime event. The last major pandemic we had on this scale was over 100 years ago.
Yep.
And so there's no one alive now who can tell us, oh, it's going to be fine. Like, you know, we went through this. It was horrible and it was, you know, it was gut wrenching, but we got through it. And, you know, there's no one here to do that. There's no one here to talk us through
like
it.
the dog in the fire.
Right. It's fine.
Fine.
My favorite meme, by the way. Like, it's the best.
Yes. And I encourage for those of you on the call, if you don't indulge in memes, please do, because it helps. But continue on.
Yeah, memes and gifts. Like that's how we get through Slack, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it reminds us that, like, the big opportunity here right now is to extend that grace and to be human and to remember that we're all going through this together, as cliche as it is. That, you know, you're meeting someone on Zoom for the first time that ordinarily you would have had an in-person meeting with. And so how can you bring that humanity in? You know, how can you bring that relatability in? And it could just be, like you said, having that conversation about a show on Netflix, or, hey, were you guys on Club Quarantine this weekend? You know? So all of those little touch points that we would ordinarily go to find common ground, I think they still exist. You just have to look for that, you know?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So we are winding down. If we have any last burning desire questions, throw them in the chat. If not, you know, thank you, Jerica, so much. Let's see, let's give everybody a second. See no more questions. So Jerica, I'm going to let you go because I know you have a stacked Zoom day like I do, and we don't want anyone to burn out on account of us midweek. So thank you once again for doing this and for sharing your experience with our community. Everyone will get supporting. You're going to get a podcast version of this so you can listen to Jerica's lovely voice, not mine. Listen to Jerica's voice is not soothing.
Yes, it is. It is lovely.
But yeah, so you guys will get that as a recording. And if you have any further questions, Jerica will be available in our Slack channel, so you can reach out to her and connect with her.
And I was going to say, you're welcome to pass along my information as well. If anyone has any questions, especially when it comes to, like, collaborating with the government or something. Happy to answer that. And yeah.
Awesome. So thank you, and everybody get back to your regular scheduled Wednesday. All right.
Bye.